Is today, particularly in the context of information overload and digital saturation.
David is saying ladies first. And I also want to take this opportunity to welcome David to Barbados. I wanted to welcome him earlier. My fellow colleague who will see later this year. I think that Mariano summed up a lot of it very well, but I want to go to the context a little bit first. Our communication as social security organization is building trust. So in my previous life, so I'm drawing from my previous life, when we looked at customer service, you always wanted to improve customer service in order to build brand loyalty. However, in public service, you're communicating and trying to communicate well to build trust. And then there's something called associative trust. Issue is with associative trust is that the performance or the service delivery of one public service organization affects the other. So if generally speaking in your country, people distrust the public service, it's going to make your communication a lot harder because of the whole notion of associative trust. Because people will come to you and say, I don't trust what I don't trust what I and behave like that. And so that is the context in which we're dealing. So just as in the private sector and in for-profit organizations, they're always focused on customer service in order to build loyalty. We are equally focused on customer service as well to build trust. And you know it even in your personal life that when trust is eroded, it is very difficult to build it back. You can almost build back customer loyalty with how you handle a poor customer interaction. You give them this, you compensate, and all of those kinds of things. But those things are not available to us in the most part in the public service. So you have to keep in your mind the whole notion of associative trust. So that's what we are working towards. So I actually think that is the biggest challenge, knowing what we're working towards, and therefore then we can use the tools and the things that you're learning today and be reminded of over the next couple of days to build that. In my former life, I did a customer service satisfaction across 6 public sector agencies when I was previously in customer service. And the Social Security and the NIS at that time had the highest level of customer expectation. They had much higher levels than the hospital, licenses, and all of these. But unfortunately, when it came to the actual service delivery, it was below. And that was beginning to spiral down. Because once your service levels are below the expectation, you go down. So whereas the hospital had very low expectations, so people had low, you hear about the long waits and so on. But when people actually spent time in the hospital, they came back and they talk a lot about how caring the doctors and nurses are, and how understaffed they were, and how they delivered excellent service despite all of that. So the next time I go to them, their customer expectation will go up. So if your customer satisfaction levels are below the expectation, you begin to spiral down. So I know that David, so I'll let David go into the other challenges. But that is the challenge that you're working with, and that's the context in which you're working.
Thanks, Kim. I don't know that there's much else that one could add. But to say this, if you look at Antigua and Barbuda, the transition for Social Security actually identifies what is the communication challenge for Social Security in Antigua and Barbuda. In its infancy, it was we had to fight for persons to see the usefulness of paying into Social Security. So the messaging was all about us being there and delivering for you. So the challenge was to overcome the person coming to you with the cutlass, saying, give me back my money, I want back my money, to them understanding the usefulness of making contributions to Social Security. We became comfortable with that messaging. We never transitioned as the organization itself transitioned. So it meant that come the early 21st century, and we now begin to experience challenges with meeting timely payments, that public trust that Kimber spoke about now shifts. Now the message is, why would we have to wait to get our money? Why can't we get our money? All this time the message was, you could put your pot on, go to Social Security, collect your money, come back and finish cooking. That was the message. Now the reality is you could put your pot on, you go to Social Security, by the time you come back home you have to put back on water into the pot and hope you get back before the house burns, before all of this happens. So persons started arguing. Then we recognized that something fundamental had to change, which is how we spoke to persons as they transition in life from that reticence to now that acceptance and that the absolute dependence upon us. So it meant that the message had to be different. Once we recognized that the message had to be different, we had to change the behavior of the individuals. Because we did. We successfully re-engineered their behavior from resisting to accepting to expecting. So we now had to change from expecting to understanding to trusting to expecting. How do you do that when the one thing that everyone is now comfortable with is expecting? Therein lies the challenge. If you do not know the direction that you wish the organization to move in, then you will never have the right message that resonates with the public, and you will never be able to change their behavior. I know many persons felt that in 2012, when we started our reform push, that it was not going to be successful. We're going to fail. But we're still here. We're still making our payments. We're still educating. We're still communicating. But the most important thing is that we've changed the behavior of expectations. Right? My staff will tell you, my big phrase is, we need to manage persons' expectations. You must manage the expectation. They're going to have it. Our challenge is, how do we communicate in an effective way that what they expect is exactly that which we're going to deliver.
Thanks, David. Now, you were talking about the vision of the next few years. And my question is, how do you see technology and innovation shaping that vision?
This is easy. This is such an easy question because that's actually our vision statement. It reads, we are committed towards building an institution that is technology-driven, strategy-focused, customer-centric. I didn't put it in the order that it's naturally in because it's customer-centric, technology-driven, strategy-focused. But ultimately what we recognize is that in managing persons' expectations, we also had to change internally. And we had to change the culture that was endemic to the organization. Just as the public began to see us as a collection entity that paid out at a specific time. So the staff began to see ourselves as collectors to pay, which is not really what Social Security is meant to be. We say that we are cradle to grave organization, and in being cradle to grave means the fundamental thing that you always have to do. When you're born, you can never stay the same. So it means that if you're going to grow, if you're going to mature, it means you have to change. So the organization has to change. So how we communicate internally has to utilize technology. How we speak to persons outside has to utilize technology. How we plan, how we manage expectations has to build around technology. And one of those great proponents of artificial intelligence is a tool, but it's a tool that cannot go beyond the human being, right? There's no computer that thinks for itself. Someone has to tell it, has to teach it how to think. So if the machine is going to learn, the human beings have to know, again, the expectations of the persons that is going to teach it. So in all, our current vision statement is actually matching how Social Security over the next few years is going to grow and change to actually deliver on the expectations of the people that depend on us. But the most important thing that we can never lose sight of, which Kim alluded to earlier, is that we are actually there to serve people. We're actually there to care about the persons. So part of our overall strategy has to be, how do we get feedback from them?
Okay.
In addition to what David said, the vision for communication over the next 5 years is to assist us in positioning our organization where we want to position it. Now we want to be a competent, caring, and a professional organization. And we need to use communication to communicate this to persons. Obviously, we have to communicate it in a way not only in the communication, but also in the way how you deliver service. So one of the key messages that we need to get through to a person is the fact that Social Security provides income support when your income is disrupted. So that's one of the key messages that we have to get over. And your income is disrupted because of sickness, and we pay sickness benefit to bring them back. It's disrupted if there's maternity is a great event, but your income is disrupted, we pay. And even when you have retired, which means there's no more salary, there's the NIS paying your pension. So we are always there when your income is interrupted. And that is really the value, that income support is the value of our organization and the value proposition that we bring. And it is very important that we are able to communicate that in everything we do. And therefore, how it impacts is if something is disrupted, then you need to deal with the person in a context of empathy. So you see how that will begin to shape our values and our personality and how we approach. So the good news is that IT and innovation can help us to do that in ways that we hadn't done it before. And so therefore, on the storytelling and the animation and so forth, we can certainly get that through and be personalized. We talked about how many of us regrettably looked at our phone the first thing this morning and regrettably again the last thing tonight. And people are doing the same thing. So therefore we can get these messages out to them. So technology is going to be very, very important. And as David said, many of us are facing the same challenges, have the same kinds of vision, because we're each doing it for our people. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from each other and share the materials and so forth as we go forward. And again, IT and innovation is going to allow us to do that a lot easier than we did before. But the key thing is the vision, and IT and innovation are tools to help us to get there. So hold fast to that vision, and everyone in the organization must have the same vision and must act out the vision. Because with our institutions, people will come and say, but they didn't tell me so, they didn't tell me that. And even when we are, as I said earlier, paying the solidarity allowance, the Barbados Revenue Authority has told us that people are coming to them to say, NIS send them to Barbados Revenue Authority. When they come over, they actually say, Revenue Authority sent me over here. So we all have to be on the same page, and that's another thing that is very important in terms of communication. I know this is not IT, but internally it is important. Our communication has to start internally. A lot of times, as communication professionals, we focus on the message, what is happening, we gotta get it out. We have to, what we always say, get it out, and we mean out there. But we have to get it inside first and make sure all of our staff are on the same page, that they can help us in sharing that information. But yes, IT and innovation are certainly tools that will enable us to do these things.
Thank you very much. We're 5 minutes past the time, but I want to ask you one last question, and please be very, very brief in your response. When we talk about the countries in the CARICOM, we usually have an issue of scale, because we have small countries that want to do a lot of things, but they have the issue of how can we afford these things. So what opportunities do you see for Caribbean social security institutions to collaborate on communication strategies or campaign, especially in addressing shared challenges like digital misinformation?
Well, this certainly is a key opportunity that we should not lose, because our leading communication professionals from Social Security are here and can get together, and I think we share common problems. And as I said in my welcome remarks, the thing that would please me most in hosting this is that coming out of this, that we agree a problem or an area and we develop a joint solution that has some kind of vehicle, a digital vehicle, video, a WhatsApp message, or something that we can share. And I am sure that we can build on that as we go forward. So that is really what I really would want to challenge you to do. I think it is doable, and I think the time is right, and the time is now.
There isn't anything to add to that, Mariano. Indeed, in 2009, the CARICOM put out a booklet. It was Move and Do Not Lose. It was a single message as to how the CARICOM agreement with Social Security was supposed to work. That's 2009. It has never been updated. It has never been modified. It has never been changed. But it just sits there like this monolith. And that is the thing that needs to be different. Not only we have a session such as this, but coming out of it, we actually once again begin to shape having a single message that we're sending out to CARICOM territories. This is what Social Security in CARICOM is meant to be about. Because in reality, that's what it is. The ability of our citizens to move from one jurisdiction to the other and know that your pension is not interrupted. And if that message remains true, which I believe it does, then this offers an opportunity for an update of that message, utilizing technology. It doesn't have to be print media as it was before. We have other means now of actually sending that message out. There may be a YouTube video, there may be a Rumble video, there could be a Discord. There's so many different channels that are available, but the message remains the same. At least I think the message hasn't changed. being able to move within CARICOM and not lose.
Thank you, David. I didn't mention it, but when I had the list of why people go to the internet, I think it was 6th or 7th, is the how to. So they go to the internet to see how to do things. So that might be a good idea. I'm just dropping it out in the air. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure. Let's give him a round of applause.